You're about to hear the story of Elspeth Kerr, the White Girl of Edenburgh, a town trapped in fog, mirrors, and memories that never end. Alone in 1780, she thought she could escape, but some towns never let go, and some girls never leave. Watch closely, because Edenburgh sees everything, remembers everything, and it's waiting for you. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this, wherever you're watching from. It's a memory Scotland never dared to keep. The year was 1780, and the town of Edenburgh, not far from the coast of the North Sea, was already dying when I arrived. The streets, once humming with trade and laughter, had fallen silent beneath the weight of smoke and superstition. My name was Elspeth Kerr, and I was 19 when I inherited my aunt's house at the far end of High Street. The house stood alone, a narrow, four-storied structure of gray stone and cold timber, leaning like an old woman with secrets to hide. I remember the sound my boots made as I walked toward it, hollow, too loud, like the town was listening. They told me no one stayed in that house long, that my aunt had gone strange before she died. But I was stubborn and poor and too proud to believe in whispers. I thought loneliness was something I could tame. On my first night, I lit 3 candles and sat by the hearth, watching the flames bend in the draft that slipped through the walls. The air smelled of soot and salt, and somewhere beneath it a faint, metallic odor I could not place. I wrote in my journal that evening, "This house creaks as though it remembers. I feel as if I've walked into someone else's dream." The wind outside moaned through the chimneys, and I smiled at my own imagination. But just before I went to sleep, I heard its footsteps on the upper floor, slow, careful, too heavy to be a rat. I held my breath. The steps stopped. Then came 3 soft knocks from inside the attic. I told myself it was wood contracting in the cold. That was the first lie I told myself in Edenburgh. By the 3rd day, I began to sense the rhythm of the town. The baker across the square never opened his shutters before noon. The well near the church was always dry. And the townsfolk, those who hadn't yet moved away, watched me with the same quiet dread you'd give a storm cloud. When I passed, they stopped talking. An old woman selling apples told me, "Best not stay after sundown, lass. The air turns thick here." "What do you mean?" I asked. She only smiled, toothless and trembling. "Edenburgh keeps what it wants." That night, I burned more candles than before. The house seemed to breathe, the walls expanding and settling like lungs. I tried to read, but my eyes kept drifting to the stairwell leading up to the attic. The wood was black with age. My aunt's handwriting still marked the doorframe. Small, circular symbols burned into the grain. She'd been a Mossiger, midwife, I remembered. A kind one. The women used to trust her until the stillbirths began. By midnight, I couldn't resist. I took my candle and climbed the steps. Each board sighed under my weight. At the top, the attic door was closed. The same 3 knocks I'd heard that first night still echoed in my head. I opened it. Cold air struck me in the face. The attic was nearly empty, only an old cradle in the corner, and something carved into the floor beside it, a ring of chalk symbols, half faded but still visible. When I stepped closer, the candle sputtered. There was something written on the wall in what looked like ink. But as I held the light closer, I realized the strokes were too thick, too uneven. It wasn't ink. It was dried blood, and it spelled one word: stay. That night, I dreamed of a woman whispering in the dark. Her voice was brittle, like paper tearing. She said, "You shouldn't have come alone." When I woke, my candle had gone out hours ago, yet the room was faintly lit as though the dawn had come inside early, but the windows were still black. The light came from the attic, thin, bluish, and alive, and I realized, with my heart stuttering in my chest, that it wasn't morning at all. The light coming from the attic pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat beneath the floorboards. I could feel it in my bones, that low rhythm, that soft shimmer pushing against the dark. I told myself not to look. I told myself I'd imagined it, but something in me, something I can't name, wanted to know. I climbed the stairs barefoot, candle trembling in my hand. The air grew colder with each step. By the time I reached the attic door, the light had vanished. When I opened it, only silence met me. The cradle was empty. The chalk ring was gone. But I knew what I'd seen. That was when I began hearing the crying. At first, it came from far away, muffled and soft, then closer, always around midnight. I searched the attic each time, but it was always empty. The crying would stop the moment I stepped inside, leaving behind only that faint scent of iron and salt, like blood drying on the wind. After a week, I stopped sleeping entirely. The days blurred together, and the town grew stranger. I noticed how no one hung laundry outside anymore. No carriages passed after dusk. Even the church bell had gone silent. On the 7th night, a letter arrived under my door. The parchment was yellowed, sealed with black wax. My name, Elspeth Kerr, was scrawled across it in a hand I didn't recognize. Inside, only one sentence: "Do not light candles after the 3rd hour." No signature, no return. I burned the letter in the hearth, pretending it didn't shake me. But when I went to bed that night, the air felt heavier, as if the house itself had been holding its breath. 3 nights later, the crying changed. It wasn't distant anymore. It came from within my own room. I froze under my blanket, every muscle locked, too terrified to breathe. The sound was small, human, broken, a child's sob, echoing in the dark. Then came the soft creak of the cradle upstairs. I forced myself to move. Each step up the stairs felt like a betrayal of reason, like walking toward the open jaws of something ancient. The cradle was rocking, slowly, back and forth, back and forth. I whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. When I touched the cradle, it stopped, and beneath it, hidden by the shadow, I found something wrapped in old linen, a doll. Its face was painted white, its eyes 2 tiny black beads. One arm was missing. When I lifted it, a clump of hair fell from inside the wrapping, soft, real, unmistakably human. I screamed, dropping it. The doll hit the floor and split open at the chest. Inside was not cotton, it was teeth, small, milk white, hundreds of them. I ran, down the stairs, past the kitchen, through the cold front hall, until I burst into the street. The night outside was thick with fog, but I wasn't alone. There were people standing across the square, not moving, not speaking, just watching me. Their faces were pale, their eyes too wide. Some wore rags, others looked like they hadn't aged a day since my arrival. Then I recognized one, the apple seller, the toothless woman. But she wasn't toothless anymore. Her mouth was full, too full, with teeth that didn't fit, sharp and gleaming in the moonlight. She smiled, and I ran until my lungs burned. When morning came, the town looked normal again. No fog, no figures, only silence. I told myself I dreamed it. Madness was easier to accept than whatever that was. But I couldn't ignore the bruises on my arms, the marks of small fingers pressed into my skin. Someone or something had touched me. That afternoon, I went to the church. The priest, Father Mallon, was an old man, nearly blind, his voice brittle as parchment. He recognized me before I spoke. "Your aunt's house," he said softly. "You shouldn't stay there." "Why?" I asked. He leaned closer. "There were children once, many of them, born too early, too pale. She buried them in her yard." My heart sank. She was a midwife. She was something else before that. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, eyes distant. "Edenburgh was built on a pit. They dug too deep when they built the church, found bones they couldn't name. Your aunt believed the earth remembers what it swallows." I wanted to leave then, but his hand caught mine. His grip was cold as stone. "If you hear crying again," he whispered, "do not answer, no matter how human it sounds." That night, I locked every door, every window. I poured salt across the thresholds like I'd seen in old stories. But at 3 a.m, the candlelight began to dim. And from the attic came a sound I'll never forget. Not crying this time. Not footsteps, laughter, small, brittle, and full of teeth. The laughter stopped as suddenly as it began, leaving a stillness so thick it felt alive. My candles guttered out one by one. The darkness in that house wasn't natural. It had weight. I sat against the wall and waited for dawn. I don't remember falling asleep, but when I woke the next morning, the world looked bruised. Pale sky, gray streets, air heavy with the scent of rain. I thought about packing, about leaving. But the keys to the house were gone. I searched every table, every drawer, gone. When I reached for the front door, the handle was ice cold. It turned easily, but the door wouldn't open. It didn't rattle or jam. It just refused, as though something held it shut from the other side. The walls groaned. For the first time, I realized I might never truly leave. I spent that day pacing from room to room. The silence pressed on me until I could hear my own heartbeat echoing off the walls. In the corner of the sitting room stood a tall mirror I hadn't noticed before. The glass was clouded, its silver backing mottled with dark stains. When I passed it, I caught a flicker of movement behind me, like someone following too close. I turned. Nothing. But when I looked back, the reflection lingered a heartbeat too long before it matched my motion. I draped a sheet over it. The house felt calmer after that. Toward evening, I returned to the attic, clutching a lantern instead of a candle. The floorboards shuddered under my feet, whispering soft sighs of age and memory. The cradle sat in its place again, though I could have sworn I'd left it broken. This time, something rested inside. A folded piece of paper, edges singed. I unfolded it with shaking hands. The handwriting was my aunt's, delicate and looping. "The children are not gone. They wait below. Do not feed the house. Do not light the mirror." The words made no sense, yet they stirred something deep in my stomach, a kind of ancestral dread. Below? There was no cellar. At least, none I knew of. I pressed my ear to the floorboards. Beneath the silence, I could hear something faint, a rhythm, like shallow breathing. The house was alive. That night I dreamt of my aunt. She stood at the foot of my bed, her dress wet with earth, her eyes hollow. She whispered, "They took my light." When I reached for her, her mouth opened wider than a scream, and a cloud of soot poured out, swallowing the room. I woke, choking, gasping in the dark. The sheets were damp, the air sour. And there beside the bed sat the doll, whole again, smiling. I struck it with the lantern, and it shattered against the wall, spilling teeth across the floor. But they kept rolling, slow and deliberate, forming a small circle at my feet. Then they stopped, all facing upward, like they were listening. I ran to the window. The square below was empty, though the fog had returned. In its heart stood the apple seller again. She lifted her hand slowly and pointed toward my door. A soft knock followed. 3 times. My breath hitched. No one could have climbed the stairs that fast. Another knock, then a voice, small and trembling, a child's whisper. "Open the door, miss. I'm cold." Father Mallon's words came back to me. "Do not answer." I pressed my hand over my mouth, heart hammering so loud I feared it would answer for me. Silence. Then the voice changed, older, raw, desperate. "Please, let me in. It's so dark out here." It sounded like me. The doorknob began to turn. I stumbled backward, tripping over the scattered teeth. The metal creaked, and a thin wisp of breath slipped through the crack beneath the door, white as smoke. When it touched the candlelight, the flame bent toward it, feeding. And I understood what my aunt meant. Do not feed the house. The next morning, I went to the graveyard behind the church. Rain had soaked the ground to mud, and the air was thick with rot. There were rows of small, unmarked stones too small for grown coffins. Fresh earth had been disturbed near the far wall. Something had been dug up. I knelt, brushing the soil aside until my fingers touched wood. A small box, no larger than a loaf of bread. When I opened it, I found locks of hair tied with ribbon, pale, almost white, and beneath them, a thin silver mirror. The glass shimmered even in the gray light. My reflection stared back, but not alone. Behind me, in the reflection only, stood the cradle, and something inside it moved. That was when I realized I could no longer trust what I saw. The town itself seemed to shift. When I blinked, doors, changing places, windows sealed that had been open moments before. I hurried back to the church, mirror wrapped in my coat. Father Mallon was waiting near the altar, candles already burning. When he saw what I carried, his face drained of color. "You found it," he whispered. "Then it's begun again. What is it?" He ran a go, shaking hand through his hair. "Your aunt tried to stop them. Those children. They weren't born of this world. They came through the mirror when the earth opened beneath the town. She sealed it once with her blood." I stared at him, horrified, and now he looked toward the door of the church, where the wind howled softly against the wood. "Now, child, the seal is breaking, and they've chosen you to open it." That night, I hid the mirror under the floorboards. I didn't sleep. The laughter returned at midnight, joined by faint humming, a lullaby I somehow remembered from my own childhood. When I looked toward the attic stairs, the blue light had returned, flickering like breath. Only this time, it was not alone. A small shadow moved across the landing, too low to be human, too slow to be a rat. It stopped at the top of the stairs and whispered my name. "Elspeth." The voice was soft and sweet, the way my mother once said it. I clutched the knell, crucifix around my neck, and whispered a prayer. But the house only laughed. By morning, the laughter had gone, but its echo clung to the walls like damp. I tried to move through the rooms as though the night had not happened, keeping the windows open to let in air that never quite reached the corners. Yet the air still smelled faintly of soil fresh-turned breathing. I thought of the priest's words. They weren't born of this world. Every board beneath my feet felt hollow now, as if the house were only a lid covering something deeper. When I went to fetch water, I noticed a thin line of dust disturbed along the kitchen floor. It ended at the base of the pantry cupboard. The wood there was newer, paler than the rest. I pressed my palm against it, and the panel gave way with a sigh. Behind it lay a narrow stairway, twisting down into the dark. For a long time I only stared. I should have run. Any sane soul would have. But the silence below drew me the way the sea draws the praised. Drowning. I lit a lantern and descended. The air changed halfway down, heavy, metallic, like breath trapped for years. The steps ended at a door of blackened oak. Symbols were burned across it, the same circles I'd seen in the attic. I pushed. It opened easily. What lay beyond was not a cellar. It was a room carved from the earth itself, round as a well, its walls lined with bones pressed into the dirt like roots. In the center stood a table, and upon it a single jar filled with clear liquid. Inside the jar floated a heart, small, shriveled, still pulsing once every few seconds. I stepped closer, unable to look away. Carved into the glass were words, faint but legible. The first heart keeps them sleeping. Then the pulse stopped, and from somewhere beyond the walls came a soft rustle, like many tiny hands brushing through soil. I ran back up the stairs, the lantern swinging wildly. When I reached the kitchen, the door slammed shut behind me of its own accord. For the rest of the day, I could hear scratching beneath the floor. That evening, I found a note pinned to the mirror I'd covered. The sheet that had once hidden it was gone, folded neatly beside the hearth. The note read, "Do not bury what still listens." I tore it to pieces. The mirror quivered slightly, the glass rippling like water. I backed away. My reflection stayed where it was. It watched me with a calm, patient smile. When darkness came, I sat by the window, staring at the empty square outside. Rain fell in a steady whisper. Every few moments lightning flared over the rooftops. And for the briefest flash, I saw faces staring from behind the fogged panes of other houses. Faces too pale, too still. During one flash, I saw movement in the square. A small figure standing in the rain, head tilted up toward my window. A child. She lifted her arm slowly, holding something in her hand. Even through the storm, I recognized it. The jar from beneath the house. She pressed it to her chest, then let it fall. The glass shattered, and though the thunder drowned all sound, I saw the blood spread across the cobbles like a blooming flower. Then the lights in every house around the square flickered and died. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the drip of rain from the eaves, each one striking like a clock counting backward. When I turned from the window, the mirror was uncovered again. My reflection no longer mimicked me. It stood closer, breath misting the inside of the glass. "Elspeth," it whispered, lips not quite matching mine. "Bring them up." I screamed and threw the poker through the glass. It shattered, but the shards didn't fall. They hung in the air like suspended rain, each fragment showing a different piece of the house: the attic, the cradle, the underground room. In one shard, I saw my aunt kneeling beside the table, her hands red, her mouth moving in silent prayer. The fragments began to spin, faster and faster, until the room filled with a shrill hum. Then, as suddenly as it began, everything stilled. The shards dropped to the floor. In their reflection, the door to the attic stood open, and light poured down the stairs, cold, blue, endless. I gathered my courage, or what remained of it, and climbed again. The cradle was gone. In its place was a gaping hole cut straight through the floorboards, revealing black earth beneath. From the depths rose that same lullaby, soft and wet, sung in a voice that was mine and not mine. I knelt at the edge and whispered, "What do you want?" The answer came from the dark, gentle as breath. To be remembered. A hand reached out, small and white, fingers slick with soil. Then another, and another, dozens of them. They grasped the floorboards, pulling themselves upward, tiny shapes of clay and bone, faces forming as they climbed. Children, half-formed, eyes blind, but mouths wide with joy. I stumbled back, the lantern shaking in my grip. They crawled onto the floor, crawling toward me on all fours, humming that lullaby between breaths. I turned and fled down the stairs. They followed, silent now except for the scrape of nails on wood. When I reached the front door, it opened on its own. Outside, the square was full of them, children of soil and memory, hundreds of them, standing in the rain. Their mouths moved in unison, whispering one word that rolled through the town like wind through a graveyard. Stay. I don't remember falling. I remember only cold and the taste of iron. When I woke, the sun was rising, and the house stood quiet again. But there were muddy footprints across the floor, small ones leading to my bed. And on the pillow beside me lay a lock of white hair. Mine morning came pale and wet. The fog that usually sat low along the streets had thickened until the whole of Edenburgh looked drowned in milk. I couldn't see the church spire from the window anymore. Even the square below had disappeared. Only the nearest lamp-post remained, its iron slick with dew. I had packed a small bag during the night, some bread, a bit of dried fish, my journal, and the crucifix that Father Mallon had given me. I told myself that if I could just reach the next town, I could forget everything. But the mirror's shards still glittered on the floor, and the small footprints across the boards had not faded. When I stepped outside, the air felt thick, muffled. Every sound died before it reached the next wall. The cobbles were damp beneath my shoes, and when I looked down, I saw that the rain had washed the mud away, leaving faint prints that were not my own. They led away from the house and into the fog. I followed them. The prints wound through streets I did not recognize. Edenburgh had never been large 3 lanes, a market square, a few alleys behind the church, but the paths I walked now were different, older. The stones were cracked, the houses leaning inward as though to whisper to one another. Doors stood ajar, but inside each house there was only dust and overturned chairs, as if the town had emptied itself overnight. After an hour, I realized that the footprints no longer led ahead of me. They surrounded me, circling in patterns, smaller and smaller, until they vanished entirely. The fog shifted then, and I saw a figure standing a short distance away. Not a child this time, a woman, tall and thin, hair pale as bone. She wore a shawl that clung to her like cobwebs. When she lifted her head, I knew her face. It was mine. She smiled with cracked lips. "Still here," she said, voice soft and blurred by distance. Then she turned and walked into the mist. I ran after her, calling out, but each step carried me deeper into streets I didn't know. The cobblestones ended abruptly at the edge of an open field, the place where the moor began. Beyond it, somewhere, should have been the next village. But there was nothing. No road, no hills, no horizon, only the fog stretching forever. I walked until my legs shook. The air grew colder, the light dimmer. When I finally turned back, the town was gone. By dusk, panic had settled into a quiet despair. I found myself back at the square without remembering how. My house stood waiting. Door open wide, warm light spilling onto the stones. Inside, the fire was already burning. A pot simmered gently on the hearth, and the smell of stew filled the air. For a moment, a ridiculous hope took root that someone had come, that I was not alone after all. Then I saw the table. 3 bowls, 3 spoons, set neatly, waiting. I whispered, "Who's here?" A voice answered from the shadows by the stairs, "We are." Small shapes stepped into the firelight. 5 of them this time, their faces smoother than before, skin stretched over clay bones. Their eyes were milky, but their smiles were wide and familiar. They looked at me as children might look at a mother returning. Home. The smallest one held something in its hands, my crucifix. It placed it gently on the table and said, "Eat. It's your turn." I backed away, but the house shifted around me, the walls breathing, the floorboards rising like waves underfoot. The children's laughter echoed from every corner, soft and eager. I fled up the stairs. The attic door was open again, the blue light spilling down. When I reached the landing, the voices followed me, whispering, pleading now, "Stay, sing to us, stay." I slammed the attic door and pressed my weight against it. For a while, there was silence. Then a slow knock came from the other side. Once, twice, 3 times. The same rhythm as that first night. I must have fainted, because when I woke, morning sunlight filled the room. The air was still, almost gentle. The attic was quiet. I thought I had dreamt it all, until I saw what lay beside me. The doll again, newly sewn, perfect, both arms attached, its mouth stitched into a planned fanned smile, and tucked under its arm, a folded note in the same looping hand as my aunt's. "The heart has stopped. The seal is open. Leave if you can." I didn't think. I grabbed my things and ran. This time the front door opened easily, and the fog was thinner. I hurried toward the road that led out of town, past the church, past the rows of empty houses. The ground was soft beneath my feet. The air smelled of rain and smoke. When I reached the crossroads at the edge of Edenburgh, I saw a wooden post. The sign that once pointed toward the next village was gone, snapped clean in 2. Only one arm of the post remained, carved with a single word I'd never noticed before. Edenburgh. It pointed both ways. I walked for what felt like hours. Every path led me back. The houses shifted, the streets rearranged themselves, turning me in circles. By evening, I found myself again at the churchyard. The graves looked different now, newer, the soil fresh. On the nearest stone was carved my name. Elspeth Kerr, 1780. The space for the second date was blank. I fell to my knees. "No," I whispered. "No, no." A hand touched my shoulder. Warm. Human. Father Mallon stood beside me, his eyes kind but hollow. "You shouldn't have gone below," he said. "I only wanted to leave." He looked toward the sky. "There's nowhere left to go, child. The town feeds on itself. Every name it carves, it keeps." Then he smiled sadly. "And now It will never be hungry again. His skin began to crumble like ash, carried off by the wind. When the last of him vanished, the church bell rang once low, mournful, final. I don't know how long I stayed kneeling there. The fog thickened again until I could see nothing but gray. Then faintly I heard it, that lullaby, drifting through the mist, sung in many voices, all too familiar. The children, they were calling me home. First person, slow, dark, atmospheric narration. There is a kind of silence that moves. I began to hear it around the 5th week in the house, not as the absence of sound, but as something breathing between the walls. Each morning I'd wake to the same stillness, the air heavy as wet wool, and for a long time I could not remember if it was day or night. The light through the window no longer changed. It hung in a pale haze, indifferent, like a sky that had given up on the world below. Sometimes I thought I heard church bells from across the town, distant, muffled, tolling through fog. But when I stepped outside, the air was empty. No one walked the streets anymore. It was as if the whole of Edenburgh had turned to stone. I used to see people, faces in the market, a figure in the baker's window. But now, every door was shut, every curtain drawn. When I called out just to hear my own voice, the echo came back wrong, thinner, delayed, like something was repeating me from far off. I stopped calling after that. My reflection changed first. At night, when I washed in the basin near the hearth, I noticed the water tremble before I touched it. My face beneath the surface looked almost right, but not quite. The eyes were a shade lighter, the lips slightly parted even when mine were closed. And one night, the reflection blinked before I did. I dropped the bowl. The water spread across the floorboards, curling toward the fire. I stared into the puddle until it dried, and when it did, the stain left behind looked like a handprint. I remember whispering, "I am still myself. I am still here." But the more I said it, the less I believed it. The attic called to me again. For weeks I'd avoided it, sealing the door with a chair, pretending the knocking was gone. But the sound returned softer now, patient, as if whoever waited above had learned my heartbeat and timed their calls to it. Every few minutes, 3 dull thuds from the ceiling, then silence, then again. By the 10th night, I could no longer sleep. I carried a single candle upstairs and removed the chair. The smell hit me before I opened the door. Not rot, not dust, but something sharp and cold, like iron dipped in rainwater. The chalk circle on the floor had changed. The symbols glowed faintly under the candlelight, wet again, as though someone had just drawn them. And there, in the middle of the circle, lay my aunt's old journal, open to a page I'd never seen. Her handwriting was neat, trembling at the edges. If she finds this, it means the circle failed. The town cannot let her leave. The girl will become what I was. The candle flickered. The pages turned on their own. Another line, written in red. The white girl keeps the memory alive. And then below that, scrawled across the paper as if written in haste, my name. I stared until my vision blurred. Then I noticed something on the wall beside the window. My aunt's mirror, an oval one with a silver frame, had been turned to face the corner. I don't remember moving toward it. When I turned it back around, I saw the attic behind me, empty. But the reflection was not. In it stood a figure pale, barefooted, hair white as frost, watching me. Her eyes were the same as mine, but her mouth was stitched with shadows. She smiled when I dropped the candle. Darkness swallowed everything. I woke in the chair downstairs, shivering though the hearth burned bright. I don't remember leaving the attic. My hands were smudged with chalk and ash. When I touched my face, I felt dried blood under my nose like I'd been bleeding for hours. The town clock struck midnight, but it struck 13 times. For the first time, I thought of running. But where would I go? The nearest village was miles away, and the road through the moor was lost to snow. Still, I tried. I packed a satchel bread, my journal, the key to the house, and stepped outside before dawn. The streets looked the same as ever, but the air was wrong, heavier. My breath froze before it left my mouth. The gate at the end of High Street should have opened to the road out of town, but beyond it was only more houses, the same ones I'd just passed. I turned back, walked again faster this time. No matter which way I went, the town folded in on itself, the streets rearranging like corridors in a dream. Edenburgh would not let me go. That night, I sat by the window and watched the snow fall. It never touched the ground. It vanished midair, dissolving into thin mist before reaching the stones. I wrote one line in my journal before the ink froze in the nib. Perhaps I was never meant to leave. Perhaps I already didn't. Then I heard my own voice whisper from upstairs, soft, identical, calling my name in the same rhythm as my heartbeat. I no longer trust what I remember. The days fall into one another now, gray, identical, shapeless. I wake to the sound of footsteps that vanish the moment I open my eyes. I light a candle, and by the time it burns halfway down, the light outside the window hasn't changed at all. Time here has stopped breathing. The only proof I have that it ever moved are the candles themselves. They melt, they die, they disappear. Everything else simply waits. I've begun to find things in the house I don't recall owning. A second comb beside my mirror, a half-drunk cup of tea still warm, a shawl hung by the door that isn't mine. Each time I find something new, I feel the reflection moving closer. Sometimes, when I speak aloud to steady myself, I hear another voice answer. It sounds like me, but it doesn't follow what I say. It finishes it. I've stopped speaking now. Last night, I dreamed of the church at the edge of town. The bell tower was cracked, leaning. I climbed its stairs, though the wood bent and screamed beneath me. From the top, I saw the town below, every rooftop covered in frost. But the frost wasn't ice. It was faces, hundreds of them, pressed into the white eyes open, mouths shaped in the silence of something that wanted to scream but couldn't. When I woke, my hands were frozen stiff, my fingers pale as bone. The frost had formed inside the room, creeping down the window glass, spelling out words I couldn't mistake. She knows you now. By morning, the reflection was waiting. I approached the mirror in the hall, the one that faced the staircase. My own image stood there, the same posture, the same face. But when I leaned in, I saw a thin white line stretching across her throat, like a healed scar. Mine has never been there. I whispered, "Who are you?" Her lips moved at the same time, but she said something else. "You were." The glass shook. Cracks spread outward like veins, and for a brief, impossible moment, I saw beyond the reflection a faint shimmer, a room that was mine and yet not mine. It looked older, ruined. My furniture was draped in dust and cobwebs. The fireplace was choked with ash, and in the chair by the hearth sat me or someone wearing my shape, her head tilted, mouth open in a soundless scream. I stumbled back. The mirror fell and shattered, but the sound didn't end. It went on and on, echoing long after the glass had settled. and when the ringing finally stopped, I heard a single knock from the attic, then another, always 3. I no longer write in my journal every day, only when I feel the house changing. The ink itself seems tired, spreading thin like it doesn't want to stay. I wrote this morning, I think the house is trying to remember me. It cannot decide what I am. There are things buried in the floorboards. I can hear them when the wind blows a hollow, uneven rhythm beneath the planks. Once, I tried to pry one loose, but the moment my knife touched the wood, a breath escaped from the crack. Warm, human, and a whisper, "Don't let her out." I dropped the blade. The sound didn't come again. The next day, I tried the doors again. The town, the streets, the sky, all the same as before. The snow never settles. The air doesn't move. I met someone. Or perhaps I imagined him. A man stood in the square, wearing an old gray coat. I hadn't seen another soul in weeks. When I called out, he turned slowly, his face blurred, as though seen through fogged glass. "Are you real?" I asked. He smiled, a sad, quiet smile. "You shouldn't be here. I can't leave." He looked past me, toward the house on High Street. "No one ever does. That's why she stays white." "What does that mean?" He opened his mouth to answer, but the sound that came out wasn't speech. It was a bell toll, deep, distant, endless, and when I blinked, he was gone. Only the echo of that bell remained, vibrating in the bones of the town. When I returned home, the front door was already open. Inside, every mirror had been turned to face. The wall, the air shimmered, faintly blue, the same light that had filled the attic that first night. I felt it then, the slow pull, the weight of something standing behind me. I didn't turn. Her voice, my voice, whispered against my ear, "You've worn this face long enough." And then, the sound of a sigh mine and the soft crack of breaking glass from nowhere. The air grew warm again. The house fell silent. I think I slept for days after that. Or maybe I never woke at all. When I finally opened my eyes, the window was gone. The walls were smooth, seamless. There was no door. Only a mirror, waiting. In it, I saw the town outside, bright, living, full of people again. But they didn't see me, and standing among them, a pale girl with white hair and empty eyes watched from the edge of the street. She looked up, she smiled, and she began to walk toward the house. I don't know how long I have been awake. The light does not move. The fog does not lift. The wind does not stir. Every hour feels like a heartbeat stretched across eternity. I've begun to notice things that were invisible before, small details that whisper their truth if I look long enough. The walls of my house, once gray stone, are now covered in faint scratches. Hundreds of them, tiny, shallow, like fingernails marking some invisible tally. They are too small to see clearly, yet they exist. And sometimes, when I press my hand against them, they burn. The mirrors have multiplied. I find them in every room, every corner, half broken, fogged with condensation, reflecting not what is, but what was. And in each one, I see her. Not me. Her. Pale hair, empty eyes, stitched smile, moving slowly, always at the edge of my vision. I tried to leave. I swear I did. I packed my satchel again, bread, journal, crucifix, keys, and opened the front door. But the town was no longer Edenburgh, or perhaps it had always been. The streets folded over themselves, looping endlessly. I walked for hours, hours that felt like years, and the same square appeared again and again. The same fog, the same lamppost. Then I saw them, the white girls, before me. I don't know how many. Their forms were faint, almost transparent, like memories burned into the air. Each wore a dress pale as ash. Some were young, some older, some hardly more than children. Their eyes met mine, pleading, accusing. You cannot leave. I ran. I sought the church, the bell tower, anything that could anchor me to the world outside. Father Mallon was there, or someone who looked like him. His skin was dust and ash, his eyes deep hollows. You are late, he said. I cannot leave, I whispered. It is too late, he replied. What do you mean? They remember you now, he said. And when the town remembers, it keeps you forever. The white girl is never the first. She is never the last. He lifted a hand, pointing toward the fog. In its gray folds, I could see figures tall, thin, and pale, emerging slowly from the mist. Hundreds, no mouths, no eyes, only faces pressed like paper into air. They are patient, he said. They wait for the girl to understand. I asked him what would happen to me. You will join them. Every white girl becomes memory. Every memory becomes the town. Every town keeps its children. You are not leaving. That night I returned to the house. The mirrors no longer reflected me. They reflected her, the stitched-mouthed girl moving toward me through the glass. Slow, deliberate. I tried to hide. I ran to the attic, the room where it all began. The cradle is back, empty, but the chalk circle pulses faintly under the candlelight, wet as if it had been drawn moments ago. I cannot stay away. I cannot leave. I realize now the truth I have been avoiding. Edenburgh is alive. It remembers. It consumes. And I am already part of it. I tried to scream. The house answered. The windows blackened. The doors vanished. The floor shifted. I fell. I woke in the square again. Same lamppost, same fog, same silence. And I saw her, my reflection, my successor, the next white girl watching from the edge of the street. She smiled, and I understood. There is no leaving Edenburgh. Not for me, not for anyone. Only waiting, only remembering, only her. I no longer know if it is night or day. The sky is the same muted gray every moment, the air thick and unmoving. I move through the streets, and the cobblestones are silent beneath my feet. Yet, somehow, the town knows where I go. Each street folds back on itself, a corridor of memory I cannot escape. I see myself in the window's pale, white-haired, stitched mouth moving ahead, walking beside me, sometimes behind, sometimes inside the glass. Sometimes I see multiple versions of myself at once. One in the attic, one in the square, one disappearing into a foggy alley. They watch, waiting, whispering the lullaby. I now know by heart. The children are everywhere. They do not speak, they only stare, small faces pressed into the fog. Their hands reach toward me, just short of touch. I want to run, but my legs do not obey. I climbed the attic stairs again, candle shaking in my hand. The air smelled of wet soil and iron, thick and close, like the breath of someone long dead. The cradle sat at the center of the room, empty, chalk circle still pulsing faintly under the flame. I knelt beside it and felt the vibration in the floor, rhythmic, steady, like a heartbeat not my own. I whispered the names I remembered, hoping they would answer. And they did. The whispers came first, soft, broken, overlapping. Elspeth, Elspeth, Elspeth. Then the laughter brittle, dry, echoing. And finally, my own voice, answering them. I am here. It was not me speaking. Or perhaps it was, but not entirely. The mirrors had multiplied further. They were now in every corner, every hallway, every ceiling beam. I turned one to face me and froze. Inside, a room I had never seen. The town, beneath the snow, frozen, empty, yet full. Countless white girls, past and future, moving through the streets, touching doors, opening windows, all waiting. And then a hand pressed against the glass from the other side mine. Only, not mine. Pale, shaking, stitched mouth, eyes too bright. It whispered, "You will stay. You have always been here." I ran. I ran through alleys, over stones, past houses that shifted with every step. Every time I turned a corner, I saw another version of myself ahead of me, walking slower, glancing back, waiting. I stumbled into the square. The lamppost flickered, the fog shifted, and I saw the first white girl again, the one who had appeared at the street's edge weeks ago. Only now she was closer. She smiled. She raised a hand slowly. "Come," she said. "I am here," I whispered. The world folded again. When I woke, I was in the attic. Candles burned. Low, wax dripping onto the floorboards. The chalk circle had changed. New symbols had appeared overnight, twisted and incomprehensible. The cradle was gone. And yet, I knew it was still beneath me, somewhere in the earth, waiting. I touched my reflection in one of the many mirrors. The glass rippled like water. I reached through, and my hand felt cold, wet, as though I had plunged it into soil. Then a voice, "Remember, or you will not remain." The town itself seemed to breathe, the walls pulsing slowly, inexorably. I understood finally. I am no longer a visitor here. I am both prisoner and caretaker. White girl, memory. Town, one and the same. The children call. The mirrors wait. The fog presses in, soft and patient. I do not want to leave. But I cannot stop running. I am beginning to forget who I was. Each time I look into a mirror, a piece of me drifts away. My eyes, my hands, the curve of my lips, all are borrowed now, borrowed from someone else, from someone who came before me. The mirrors multiply endlessly, each one showing a slightly different version of myself. Slightly older, slightly younger, slightly gone. I try to speak to them, but my voice is swallowed before it reaches the air. Only whispers answer me, the lullaby, soft and insistent. Elspeth, Elspeth, Elspeth. I hear it everywhere, beneath the floorboards, behind the walls, even inside my own head. I walked the streets again, though I know I never leave the same one twice. The town twists and folds in on itself, each alley a memory of the one before. The lamppost flickers in the mist, and under its light I see her, my reflection, stitched mouth, white hair, waiting. She does not speak, but I hear her voice inside my mind. It is time. I don't know what she means. Time has no meaning here. The fog is thick, alive. pressing against my skin. The children are around me, but I cannot see them clearly. Their presence is a weight in the air, cold and steady, circling me, pulling me back toward the house. I try to run. The streets fold. The square repeats. I am trapped. The attic called again. I obeyed. When I entered, the candles were already lit, flickering blue. The chalk circle pulses faintly on the floorboards. And there, in the center, the cradle, empty, waiting. I knelt beside it, and the whispers came stronger, more insistent, more like commands than voices. Remember. You must remember. I do not know what I am to remember. My aunt's warnings, the children beneath the earth, the faces pressed into the snow. All of it? Or only myself? I reached into the cradle. The air was cold as water. Something small, something alive, rested in my hands, but I cannot see it. The pulse is steady. The heartbeat is not mine. I look into the mirrors again. Each one shows a different possibility. Me running through the streets. Me kneeling before the cradle. Me lying still, half frozen in the square. All of them stare back, at me with stitched mouths and white hair. I realize now, the mirrors are not showing possibilities. They are showing memories. Every white girl who came before me, every girl who became part of the town, they are all here, watching, waiting, and I am next. The house groans, the walls pulse. The fog presses in through the windows. I am alone, yet not alone. The children stir beneath the floorboards, whispering, breathing. The mirrors watch. My reflection waits. I am losing myself. I am already forgetting who I was. And yet, I know I cannot stop, cannot look away. The town remembers me, and I must remember it, or I will disappear. I kneel beside the cradle. The heartbeat in my hands is steady. I do not know whose it is mine, the children's, my reflections, but I know what I must do. I close my eyes, I open my mind, and the town opens too. The house is no longer separate from me. I feel its pulse in my chest, the rhythm of its walls echoing my own heartbeat. Every floorboard, every cobwebbed beam, every mirror, they are extensions of me now. I cannot step outside without feeling the streets twisting beneath my feet, guiding me back. The town has no edges. Edenburgh is infinite and collapsing at the same time. I am inside it, part of it, yet still standing, still aware. The mirrors watch. They multiply. I do not see myself in them anymore. Only the other white girls, countless, pale, stitched-mouthed, waiting for me to understand. I kneel beside the cradle in the attic. The pulse in my hands has not stopped. The heartbeat is not mine. I whisper, I am here, and the answer comes, all around me, inside me, in every breath of the house. You are always here. I try to remember myself before the town claimed me, but the memories slip like water through my fingers. My mother, my aunt, the small village I came from, all dissolving, becoming faint, like faces pressed into fog. And then I see her, the first white girl. She steps through the mirrors, walking toward me slowly, each movement deliberate, heavy with knowledge. Her eyes are mine, yet older, sharper, infinite. It is your turn, she says. I do not want this, I whisper. Her smile stretches wider. No one does. But it is the way of Edenburgh. You know now. You cannot leave. You will remember. And in remembering, you will keep the town alive. She reaches for my reflection in the nearest mirror. I see it shrink, fold, merge into her. And then I understand. I am not leaving. I am not leaving. The walls breathe. The floor pulses. The children stir beneath the house. Their whispers grow louder, a tide that swells and pulls me down. I am part of it now, and yet I see myself from the outside, kneeling, white-haired, stitched-mouthed, whispering the lullaby to the next girl. The mirrors do not reflect me. They contain me. I open my eyes. The town stretches before me, endless streets in every direction. Snow falls, yet it never lands. Fog swirls, shaping itself into faces I cannot recognize, yet all familiar. I see the square, the lamppost flickers, and there, standing at the edge, another pale girl watches. My lips twitch. The lullaby begins on my tongue. Elspeth, 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 I whisper. You are here. She steps forward. Her eyes are wide with fear, wonder, and disbelief. She does not yet know. I take her hand. The town shudders. The mirrors tremble. The house groans. And I sing. The lullaby fills every corner of Edenburgh. The square, the streets, the attic. Beneath the floorboards, binding the new white girl into the cycle, binding her to me, binding her to the town. Her reflection merges with mine in the mirror. The fog folds. The lamppost flickers once, then steadies. I understand now. Edenburgh does not forget, and I am its memory. I am the white girl. I have always been. I will always be. The town exhales. The children pause. The mirrors watch. And the next girl arrives. The town is no longer outside me. Every street, every house, every lamppost, every cobblestone pulses in my veins. I walk the square and feel its heartbeat beneath my feet. The snow falls endlessly, yet never touches the ground. The fog swirls, heavy and patient, wrapping itself around my body, my mind, my memories. The mirrors are everywhere. They do not show reflections anymore. They are windows into the town's memory, my memory, the memory of every white girl who came before me. I touch one, and it trembles. I hear whispers, hundreds of them, soft, pleading, insistent. Elspeth, Elspeth, Elspeth. I do not flinch. I kneel in the square and place my hands upon the stones. I can feel every heartbeat beneath them. The children, the town, the girls before me. Every pulse is my pulse. Every whisper is my voice. Every memory belongs to me now. I rise. The mirrors ripple. The walls breathe. The fog shifts. And I see her, the next girl, pale, wide-eyed, stepping into the square for the first time. She looks at me with fear and wonder. She does not know yet. I reach out. My lips begin the lullaby. Elspeth, Elspeth, Elspeth. She hears it. Her hands tremble. She steps closer. The fog folds around us. The mirrors quiver. The town holds its breath. And she understands. Her reflection merges with mine. She is the white girl now, part of the town, part of me, part of the endless memory that is Edenburgh. I smile. The town exhales. The children pause, watching. The mirrors settle. I understand everything now. I am not the first. I am not the last. I am the memory that binds them all. And Edenburgh will never forget. The lamppost flickers once, steady and calm. The fog drifts. The snow swirls. I am the white girl. I am the town. I am eternal. And the next girl arrives. The town waits. The fog curls around the square like a living thing. The snow falls endlessly, drifting, dissolving before it touches the ground. The lamppost flickers softly, the only steady light in a world that shifts and folds with every step. I stand at the center, the pulse of Edenburgh thrumming beneath my feet. The mirrors surround me, stretching infinitely into the mist, and each one holds a memory, a fragment, a ghost of a white girl who came before me. I am here. I have always been here. The next girl appears at the edge of the square. Pale hair, wide eyes, trembling hands. She looks at me, and I see fear. I see wonder. I see herself reflected in me. I step forward. My lips begin the lullaby. Elspeth, Elspeth, Elspeth. Her hands reach for mine. She does not resist. She steps closer. The fog folds around her. The mirrors quiver. The town hums in recognition. And then I see it, the truth. I have always known, but never fully understood. The white girl is not a person. She is a memory. She is the town. She is the thread that binds the living to the dead, the past to the present, the house to the streets to the fog to the children beneath the floorboards. I take her hand. She looks at me, eyes wide. I smile, and the town breathes. The mirrors settle. The fog drifts. The snow swirls. The lamppost flickers once, then stays steady. I feel the heartbeat of every white girl who came before me. Their whispers now quiet, satisfied. They are part of me. I am part of them. The children beneath the floors stir, then lie still. The house exhales. Edenburgh exhales. And I understand finally, I will always be here. The white girl is eternal. The town is eternal. The cycle is eternal. The new girl steps fully into the square. I release her hand. She is one with the town now. She is the next white girl. And I watch, smiling, as the fog folds around her, as the mirrors ripple, as the snow swirls and dissolves, as the lamppost stands steady, as Edenburgh waits for the next. I have become the memory. I have become the town. And Edenburgh will never forget. If you thought Elspeth's fate was terrifying, remember, every town has its secrets, and every memory can become a trap. If you like this story, hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment telling me what you would do if you were trapped in a place like Edenburgh. And remember, some stories never truly end.